Have you been looking for a way to up your fall decor this season? Then this is your sign to head to the Dollar Tree. Next, I went to the Home Depot and got a 1 by 12 by 8 piece of lumber that I had them cut in half so that I had two 4-foot pieces. I headed home and sanded the entire board, starting with an 80 grit sandpaper and working up to 220 grit. I wiped the board down with a damp cloth, allowed it to dry, then stained the entire board in a dark stain color called Early American. I made sure to stain the front and sides, allowed that to dry, then stained the back. Once the stain was dried, I used some good painter's tape and taped off a border around the board, just using the width of the tape. Next, I painted the center of the board with a light beige acrylic paint and allowed that to fully dry. I ended up doing a total of 3 coats of paint and removed the tape while the paint was wet so that I could touch up the edges as needed. Lastly, I used 2 coats of a spray sealant to seal the whole board front and back. I set the board aside and got to work cutting 7 pumpkins in half, starting on the top, right behind the stem, and cutting down. This part is a little bit messy, so beware. You can use either part of the pumpkin, but I chose to use the half with the stem on it. I painted all the pumpkins 2 coats of a burnt orange acrylic paint and allowed them to fully dry. When the pumpkins were dry, I used a stencil I made on my Cricut and painted 1 letter on each pumpkin to spell the word welcome. You can also freehand this step. Next, I created a bow using some buffalo check burlap ribbon and some floral wire I had on hand, then laid the board down on a flat surface. I arranged the bow and pumpkins going down the painted portion and made sure they were evenly spaced. I made a mark under each pumpkin so I had an idea where to place them once they were glued. When everything was glued down, I glued a small amount of raffia behind the stem of each pumpkin. Then I added a few faux pumpkins around the base of the sign, and now it's the perfect addition to my outdoor fall decor.
For this project, you're going to need some stovetop burners. Start by placing your burners upside down onto some cardboard boxes. Spray paint the borders with orange spray paint. While the paint's drying, glue your boards together. Once the burners are dry, place them on top of your wood boards and then hot glue them into place to secure them. Grab your vine and wrap it around the wood boards in between and around the burners. Grab some ribbon, cut it off, and make a bow. Hot glue the ribbon into place above each of the burner pans. Cut out a pumpkin face and place it onto the burners. Use some glue and glue the faces into place. Your pumpkin display is ready. I place mine in a little flower pot and by my front door.
Are you wondering what to do with dollar store pumpkins? Grab some raffia in fall colors. Run a bead of hot glue from the top of a pumpkin and down along the indentation on the side of the pumpkin. Take a piece of colored raffia ribbon and press it onto the bead line until it is secure. Apply the bead of glue up onto the opposite indentation on the other side of the pumpkin and press the raffia down to attach. Continue to glue raffia along the different indentations on the pumpkin until they have all been outlined by the raffia. Try using color combinations that highlight the outlining of the pumpkins. Brown raffia on a cream pumpkin and gold raffia on an orange pumpkin are just a couple of ideas. Once the pumpkin is outlined, you can push the pumpkin stem back in. Once you have wrapped your pumpkins, start to attach them to a grapevine wreath using a hot glue gun. Start with the larger pumpkin and anchor it to the bottom of the wreath. Attach a smaller pumpkin to the side of the larger. Take 2 lengths of wired ribbon in coordinating fall colors and patterns. With a small piece of jute rope, pinch the 2 ribbons in the middle and tie a knot with the rope. Grab a bunch of colored raffia and cut it in a length about half as long as the 2 ribbons. Last, tie the raffia bow to the grapevine wreath. Display your new wreath on a door for a festive fall welcome to your home.
For today's project, we're going to start with one of these pumpkin pails. Oops, this one though has a hole in it. We're going to need to tape that off because we need this thing to hold concrete. So put a couple layers on, take that smile, let's get to work. First thing we're going to do is take a bottle that can fit inside the bucket. Any size will do, but it's got to be able to fit inside there because we need to create a cavity. Also, I'm going to put a little bit of a dowel on the bottom with some hot glue just as a spacer and as a drainage point. We're going to set that on there. Now we're going to go outside, and as you can see, I am setting up this concrete outside. It does create a lot of dust. First thing you want to do is pour some water in the bucket before you pour the concrete, then some concrete. I am using gloves because this concrete can really dry out your hands. But once you pour it, make sure you add a little bit more water. We're going for kind of a soupy mix on this concrete. Once you get it stirred up and it's nice and thin, go ahead and put it in the bucket. But I need you all to do me a favor. Next time I pour this concrete, will you guys remind me to put down some cardboard? It does get a little messy on the driveway. What we're going to do though is keep filling this up. And yeah, that's Pam cooking spray. We're going to put that on the bottle and the dowel because it's going to be easier to remove once you put that slippery spray on there. Once we get it filled up, go ahead and stick that right in there, that bottle. But it wants to float. So once we fill up the sides, I notice that it wants to just keep popping up. Tap the sides though. We want to get any air bubbles out that we can. I put a little spacer block inside on top of the handle there, slip it right in, and that way it'll hold it down while the concrete cures. Once we get it set up and in place, let it dry overnight. But the next day, it's going to be ready to go. And here it is in all its glory. Take that block out, but we need to remove the concrete from the pail. Get you a sharp knife, and we're going to go right along behind the handle, down one of the creases. Now be very careful. Keep all your digits and everything out of the way, and just make a couple of passes and cut. Don't cut all the way through at the bottom though, because you can actually reuse this pail by taping up the sides. Once you get it, start pulling it apart. Tip it over if you need to because it's a little heavy. That thing weighs about 15 pounds. And there it is. But we got to get rid of that bottle also. Remember we put that Pam cooking spray? It'll just come right out, but the dowel got stuck in there. So I'm going to grab a pair of pliers and just pull that right out. Now, if you don't have a drainage hole on the second one that I did, just use a drill. You can go ahead and just drill through. That concrete's still soft, and that'll make a great drainage hole. Now it's time to paint. Yep, you got it right. I went with the rustic orange because we want to make this pumpkin look as real as possible. Then I want to paint the eyes. I want those to stand out a little bit. Just a little bit of acrylic black paint will do the work. Again, this will take just a couple of coats. Once that paint dries, we need to put a protective finish on it. This thing's going to sit out in the fall, in the winter. It's going to need something to protect it from all the rain and all the mist and fog. And then it's time to plant. Any little type of plant will do. Remember, it's got a drainage hole. And there it is. Looking great. Add a little bit of water and keep it good, and it's going to greet all those little trick-and-treaters as you come up to the front door. I hope you enjoyed this project as much as I did.
Grab some small white pumpkins and 2 hanging baskets from your local dollar store. Remove the chains from the hanging baskets and set them aside. You'll use them later. Take some zip ties, flip one of the baskets upside down, and connect the 2 baskets together by zip tying the middle where the baskets meet. Take a eucalyptus garland, or any type of garland that you like, and twist the wire end around one of the spokes of the wire globe. Start to wrap the garland around the bottom half of the globe by feeding the end of the garland in and out of the basket spaces. This can take a little time because you don't want to strip any of the leaves off the garland as you work. Take your time and move the leaves through the spaces as you wrap the garland. Twist, move, and arrange the leaves so they face outward and cover the bottom half of the basket globe. Take some battery-operated fairy lights, those with a remote control will work best, and nestle the battery pack into the bottom of the globe among the garland leaves. Begin to wrap the fairy lights over and around the bottom half of the basket globe. Wrap over the top, and as you wind, try to space the lights evenly and tuck the end into the garland leaves. Next, fill in the center of the garland-wrapped globe with a generous amount of Spanish moss. Remember those white dollar store pumpkins? Give them a very light dusting of spray paint in a coral color. Once the pumpkins are completely dry, tuck them into the basket globe and nestle them into the Spanish moss. Now take one of the basket chains that you removed earlier and attach the connecting clips from the original chains to both ends of this chain. Then take one of your basket hooks and attach this to that middle link. Hang your new pumpkin globe on a porch or from a tree branch. Turn the lights on with your remote control and enjoy the cozy hanging pumpkin glow on a beautiful fall evening.
I've got this one section in the front of my house, and it's kind of an eyesore as you see from the street. First, I'm going to take what's called a 2x3, and I'm going to set it up next to it, and I want to mark it just a little bit taller than the electrical panel that I want to cover. Next, I'm going to take a speed square and use it to mark a straight line across the board. This is a perfect tool for this job. Next, I can take a jigsaw or a handsaw and cut the board straight across the line. What I need to do this is 2 boards of the same length. So I'm going to use a speed square again, mark a line, and I'm going to get it cut straight across. Once I got these 2 just straight and nice and cut, I'm going to lay them on a table, and I need to take a lattice that I cut to the right width and set that up on the boards. I'm going to situate them just perfect to the right to the edge, and then I'm going to use some staples to put them in place. Staples will hold a lot better than nails because it grabs more of the area on top. I'm going to work my way down on one side, putting the staples in, and then I'm going to go to the other side, pull it tight, and do the same thing with the staples and put those in. I also want to make sure that I cut out for the meter. That way it can be read. So I'm going to sit it up right next to where it goes. I'm going to mark the 4 lines that go around the lattice. I'm then going to bring it back over to the table, mark those across, and I need to cut them with the jigsaw. Just an easy cut all around the side there will make it to where the meter will stick through. Little mistake, I should have painted this board before I put the lattice on, but I didn't, I forgot. So I'm just going to give it a nice coat of paint, do the best I can, no drips, and put it in place. While that paint's drying, next I'm going to take a cedar board for fence pickets, and I'm going to make a little box with it. These are really nice and neat. I can put those together. They're 24 inches wide. And again, like I said, I'm going to build a box. So I'm going to put the 3 sides together using brad nails, and then I'm going to put some end pieces on. I should have probably used some wood glue also to hold it together, but it was a smaller box and it went on great. Once I got it put together, I'm going to put some screws on the sides towards the bottom of it, and then I will stick it on there and go ahead and also screw it from the back. Now I need to secure this to the side of the building just using 2 small screws. I'm going to go ahead and put some dirt in there because I need to put a planter. Now the side of this house gets super hot. Anything I plant will probably die, so I'm going to use some fake plants, put those up, and run some vines up there. What this does is it turned it into a beautiful side piece that covers the meter panel, but as you can see, I did cut out the side there to allow the meter to be read anytime it needs to. I think it turned out great and it looks really awesome. I hope this inspired you to build your own outdoor curb appeal hack.
Here's a cool idea to upgrade your garden with these LED lights. First, I cleared out all the overhanging plants and exposed the existing retaining wall. Then I trimmed the overgrown bushes and used a power washer to clean the concrete blocks. After washing, I added another row of blocks, filled the gaps with sand, and topped up the garden with new mulch. It already looked amazing and I was ready to install the lighting. I then placed the rope light on the inner side of the edging, starting from the farthest end of the garden bed. I secured the light in place using garden staples about every 12 inches. This light is linkable and customizable to fit any length you need and flexible enough to follow the curves. Most importantly, LED lights are energy efficient. This is a perfect way to light up your walkways and other parts of the garden at night. It enhances safety while adding beautiful accent lighting. And there you have it, an easy way to highlight your garden bed with LED rope lights.
You'll want to head to the nearest store to pick up a cute outdoor carpet after seeing this fabulous summertime hack. I love sitting outdoors in my yard. However, I have an open section of chain link fence that doesn't offer the privacy I desire. So here's how I got all the privacy I wanted in just a few minutes without building anything at all. I'm positioning the carpet against the fence, then I'm slightly separating the carpet weave to create a gap. Then I'm threading the zip ties through the carpet and attaching it to the fence. I chose to roll the carpet at the bottom of the fence in case I'd like to eventually move it to another location. Each corner is getting some zip ties, along with a few along the sides and top to ensure the carpet is pulled nice and taut. Each of the zip tie ends are now being trimmed off with scissors. With plenty of zip ties in place, this carpet is here to stay, and super easy to remove when desired too. Here's hoping this carpet hack gave you some added inspiration to add an easy privacy screen to your own yard in just a few minutes.
I used 3 pallets to cover this front yard eyesore, and I can't believe how good it looks. I stood 2 pallets up on either side of my garbage can and thought they were the perfect height, so I didn't trim them. I cut up a 3rd pallet and used the boards for the top. After you get each board off, then you can pull the nails. I measured the distance between each pallet as they were standing up, which was 38 inches. I didn't show this, but I used a miter saw to cut each edge so it was square. I secured the boards with a brad nailer, and then I added the pallet boards on top, also securing them with a brad nailer. Just like this, it creates a nice way to store your garbage can, but I decided to take it one step further and added a dollar store bamboo beach mat and planter on top. I absolutely love how this turned out. It's the perfect hideout for my ugly garbage can. I grabbed a free pallet for this genius garden hack. I used a hammer to remove some of the boards carefully. I left the nails in the boards so that I could use them again. I made 3 rows with 3 boards tight together on the bottom row, 2 boards together in the middle, and 2 boards near the top. The pallet was taller than I wanted, so I used a reciprocating saw to cut the extra off. I flipped the pallet over and followed the same pattern with 3 boards together on the bottom, 2 in the middle, and 2 at the top. I used all the leftover boards from this pallet, plus a couple extra scrap 1x4s. I cut more 1x4s to fill in the bottom of each section and secured it with 3 nails on the front, and then I flipped it over and I hammered in 3 nails on the back side. I gave the front a quick sand with 120 grit sandpaper using my palm sander. Next, I filled each section with soil and planted my favorite herbs. I used my Cricut to print stencils to paint labels for each section. When applying the stencil, I first sealed it with Mod Podge, and then I let it dry before painting with acrylic paint. Once the paint was near dry, I removed the vinyl and did some touch-ups with my black acrylic paint pen. And now I have the most beautiful herb garden that can also be hung on the wall. I hope this inspired you to create your own pallet herb garden.
I've got an eyesore in the front of my house, and it's my garbage can. I've got an inexpensive idea, and it happens to use pallets. What I'm going to do is get them squared up, and I want to make sure that they're just wide enough for the garbage can to go in and out without rubbing. Once I get it squared up and the sides are holding up pretty good, the next step is I got to cut some railings actually. These can be made out of 2x3s or 2x4s. Once they get cut, I'm going to measure about 7.5 inches down from the top. This is going to give me some good markings that I need to put each one on each side of the pallets. It doesn't take a lot of screws because not a lot of weight's going to go on there. Then I'm going to grab my reciprocal saw and I'm going to cut the less desirable pallet that's going to go on top. So all it takes is 3 good cuts. Once I do got this cut, what I can do is I could sand it down a little bit to make it look nicer, but I think I'm just going to go ahead and just slide it right on top. Take some care with this because when I put it on top, then I'm going to secure it with some screws. Once I got that, I want to go ahead and trim out the opening. I grabbed some old fence pallets that I had that were redwood, and I'm going to go ahead and just brad nail these on the top. I am also going to put it on the side. Now, it doesn't take a lot of nails to hold this in place because it doesn't weigh very much. So, once I get this on, I am going to go ahead and do the same on the sides. That way it looks more like a little bit of a door frame or anything when I put it on. Once it's all put together, then I can slide my garbage can in. Now, I want to decorate it. There's many options you can do. You can put some vines on the top around the sides, hang some pictures or anything like that. But I think it turned out really nice. Gets rid of that eyesore of just having the garbage can out front. I hope this motivated you to build your own inexpensive trash can enclosure. I've got an area on the side of my house that is just ugly with an old hose. So what I'm going to do is take some handles and also the base for a planter, and I'm going to put these handles on the side. But it can be difficult to find out how to do it. So all you got to do is take the handles and put some tape over them. Take a pen and you're just going to poke through where the screws go in the handles. Then you'll just peel the tape off, and you can then transport the tape onto the side of the planter where you want to drill your marks. Once you got it on there firmly, just go ahead and take a pen or a black marker and just push it through and mark. This is where you're going to drill the holes. Once you remove the tape, it's going to show you where your 2 marks are. Now, on the screws that go for the handles, you want to make sure you get the right size drill bit, just enough that the threads will go through the planter. Drill your holes, and then you can pop the screws through from the inside to the out. And that way you can go ahead and put these handles on. Use your hand to tighten them first, and then a screwdriver later. Go ahead and put both sides on, and make sure you get them nice and tight. We're going to be using these handles to carry this base around. Then what we're going to do is go ahead, put both sides on, but we're going to flip it over because we need to drill some drain holes. I went ahead and just used these marks that are on the back and put them all the way through, and also want to make sure I get the middle one. That way it can drain if it needs to. Once we got these holes drilled, turn it back over, and we're going to use some succulent potting soil. Put that all over and spread it out, fill it up, and then you can begin to go ahead and transplant your succulents over to this base. All you have to do is make a hole and put the roots in. It's great. Succulents are so good at being transported over from one pot to another, and they're easy to take care of. I love having them because they don't take as much water. Sometimes I call them forget-me-nots because you can forget them for a while and they hold up great. Go ahead and put in as many or as few as you want. On the planter though, where we're going to hide the hose, we need to drill a hole about halfway up, and that's how we're going to put the hose in. Go ahead and make sure about a 1-inch hole will be just fine. Also, sometimes them garden hose leak, so we also want to put some drain holes in the bottom of this planter. Now the last thing we got to do is put some wood in there. That's going to hold this lid up. I went ahead and used my drill to do a pre-drill, put some screws in there, and then you put the wood back up against the side, and you'll use your drill to go ahead and cinch those screws down. If you do it nice and tight, it's going to hold it really nice. Once you got it, make sure you do 2 on each side. Make sure you also get that garden hose through. Pull it all the way through, wrap it up, and look at that. Go ahead and put your succulent tray right on top. I hope this inspired you to build your own DIY succulent tray garden hose holder. I finally got that hot tub that I've always wanted in the back porch, but neighbors are kind of close. First thing I'm going to do is get this free pallet I got, and it actually is in really good shape, but I've got to remove all the nails to use the boards. So I'm going to use my crowbar and my hammer, and I'm going to go through and very carefully loosen some of the boards, but you can't do the whole thing all at once. You got to work your way up and down and go back and forth to loosen the nails. Don't try to pull it all off at one time. You'll crack the boards. The reason I want to use this is as a free pallet, it's going to save me a lot of money on all the boards. Once you work your way up and down, look at that. It comes right out and it's easy to use. But we got to get rid of those nails. So all you got to do is turn it over. Go ahead and tap those nails on one side. Throw it back over the other side. Use the claw on your hammer. You can pull it apart or just use your hands and they'll pop right out. Now you've got a ton of boards you can use. Next step is to use 1 1/4 inch PVC pipe. We're going to cut 4 pieces at 12 inches long. This is going to be the base of our privacy screen. I'm using a PVC cutter here because it gives it a nice clean cut edge. You can use a hacksaw if you need to. Now the next step is to get a T. As you can see, 2 ends are 1 1/4 and the top is actually 1 inch. So take 2 of your 12-inch pieces and you're going to place that on each side of your base. This is going to give you a base of 24 inches. Next step we got to do is once we get the 2 legs together, we're going to paint them black. Now I'm going to take the 1-inch sides that are 4 feet long, and I'm going to use those with a spacer so each board is separated the same distance. You can lay them out and eyeball them this way if you want, or you can take a straight board and use that as a guide on it getting all the slats straight. Once I do that and put them all in there, I'm going to take a 1 1/4 inch drywall screw and just drive it through the wood. And I'm going to use the same holes that I used pulling the nails out. That way we're not putting extra holes in there. As you can see, I can take the PVC pipe and bring it off the edge. It doesn't need to go all the way on the side. This one on the other side, it's already straight, ready to go. Just put it underneath. And again, you're going to pop those screws right in. Now you're going to take that base and you're going to put it on each end of your privacy screen. Now you can glue it, but I'm just going to go pop it on and it holds up really nice. The next step and the last step is to put some hooks on because I've got a great idea for it. It can hold up the towels too. So not only do I got a privacy screen, but I've got someplace to let my towels air out and dry. I hope this inspired you to build your own PVC pallet privacy screen. Thank you for watching Home Talk, and we'll catch you next time.